Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Cat Tales, a Warrior Cats reread podcast. I'm your host, Coffee, and this week we are reading chapters 8 through 11 of Fire and Ice, the second book in The Prophecies Begin, which is the first Warrior Cats arc. A little update before I get started. I've already had some reviews come in this podcast, which is amazing, and I did happen to get a complaint that the podcast is explicit, and while I do pretty much try and keep the content away from inappropriate stuff because that's weird, occasionally I'll make a joke or something like that, or I'll curse a lot depending on the episode. So going forward, I'm going to make this an all ages podcast, and I'm not going to curse anymore, or at least I'm going to try my very, very hardest not to, so that way everyone can enjoy my podcast. In terms of the episodes that are already out that might have some explicit content or curse words in it, depending on how much time I have, I might go back and edit those and re-upload them, but I'm not sure yet, so bear with me on that. I picked up another job recently, so I have 3 now, and then this podcast is just something I like to do for fun. So between my 3 jobs and this podcast, I don't have a ton of extra time, so I'll see what I can do. That way everyone can enjoy this podcast from start to finish. All right, so getting into Chapter 8, where we picked up last time, Fireheart and Graystripe brought RiverClan back from their exile. They made it back to their territory, and then Fireheart and Graystripe make the very bad decision to cut through RiverClan territory to get back to their own territory, instead of going through 4 trees. This ends badly, and a RiverClan warrior ends up falling into the gorge that is outside of RiverClan territory and drowning. So, Chapter 8 starts with, quote, "Leopard Fur lifted her head and yowled into the wind. 'White Claw, no!' Graystripe scrambled backward until all 4 paws were on safe ground. His wet fur was bristling and his eyes were wide with shock. 'I tried to grab him. He just lost his footing. I didn't mean to—' The words tumbled out breathlessly. Fireheart bounded across to his friend and pressed his nose into his flank for comfort, but Graystripe backed blindly away. One by one, the other cats turned away from the edge and looked at Graystripe. The RiverClan cat's eyes were narrowed with fury, their shoulders tense. Willowpelt and Whitestorm moved instinctively toward Graystripe, taking up defensive positions on either side of him. Leopard Fur growled deep in her throat, but it was a warning to her own cats. They were to stay back. The RiverClan deputy stared Tigerclaw straight in the eye. "This has gone beyond a border fight," she murmured. "We shall return to our clan. It has become a matter to settle at another time and in a different way." So what does she mean by that? Will there be another battle, or will RiverClan understand that it was an accident? Tigerclaw defiantly returned Leopard Fur's stare. He showed no fear, but merely gave the smallest of nods. Leopard Fur commands her cats to go back, end quote. Leopard Fur's menacing words made Fireheart shiver. A sense of foreboding settled over his heart like a cold shadow as he realized that this battle might have started a war. Okay, so that answers my question. They started another feud. Literally can't have anything in Warriors. If it's not one thing, it's another. Deadfoot steps forward and says that the WindClan cats should leave, and his clan thanks them, and they head back toward their territory. One Whisker passes Fireheart and glances briefly at him before walking on. The yearning is real. I don't know what One Whisker is doing, but every little interaction between him and Fireheart has been a little bit gay, and I'm here for it. Fireheart notices Sandpaw is still standing at the edge of the gorge. She seems frozen in place, and her eyes are fixed on the steep drop, and he guesses that she realizes how close she had come to sharing White Claw's fate. Tigerclaw orders the ThunderClan warriors to follow him back to camp. Fireheart urges Graystripe to keep up, but Graystripe shrugs. His eyes are dull and clouded with pain, and he's dragging his paws. So, he clearly blames himself for the RiverClan cat's death. Tigerclaw scolds Fireheart and Graystripe for not keeping up, saying Graystripe needs to get back to camp as soon as possible. Fireheart had been looking forward to getting back home, but now he barely notices as he crosses back into ThunderClan territory. And they get back to camp, and, quote, a warm mew welcomed them from the shadows beyond the lichen. The 3 cats pushed their way into the snug cave. "Welcome!" Bluestar leaped up, purring. "Did you find WindClan? Did you bring them back?" "Yes, Bluestar," Fireheart replied quietly. "They are safe in their camp. Tallstar told me to thank you." Good, meowed Bluestar. Her eyes darkened as she noticed Tigerclaw's grim expression. "What has happened?" "Fireheart decided to return home through RiverClan territory," growled Tigerclaw. Graystripe looked up for the first time. "It wasn't just Fireheart who decided," he began. Tigerclaw interrupted him. They were found by our RiverClan patrol. If my patrol hadn't heard their yelps in time, they wouldn't have made it home at all. So you rescued them, yawned Bluestar, relaxing. Thank you, Tigerclaw. It's not that simple, Tigerclaw snorted. They were fighting beside the gorge. A RiverClan warrior who was battling Graystripe fell over the edge. Fireheart noticed Graystripe flinch at Tigerclaw's words. Bluestar's eyes widened. Dead? She asked, looking horrified. Fireheart meowed quickly. It was an accident. Graystripe would never kill a cat over a border fight. I doubt Leopard Fur sees it that way. Tigerclaw turned on Fireheart, his tail lashing from side to side. What were you thinking? Traveling through RiverClan territory. And with WindClan cats. You've sent a message that we are their allies, which will only drive RiverClan and ShadowClan closer together. WindClan was with you in RiverClan territory? Bluestar looked even more alarmed. Just 2 warriors. Tallstar gave us an escort home. We were tired, Fireheart murmured. You should not have been in RiverClan territory, Tigerclaw snarled, especially with WindClan cats. It wasn't an alliance. They were escorting us back home, Fireheart protested. Does RiverClan know that? Spat Tigerclaw. Quick pause here. I honestly see both sides. I think they're both right for different reasons. Fireheart was just trying to get home. He was being escorted. But also, I hate to say it, but Tigerclaw is correct. Because he should not have been in RiverClan territory with WindClan warriors because that sends a bad message. So I think Fireheart ultimately made the wrong decision here. Anyway, continue. Fireheart says, RiverClan knew we were going to find WindClan and bring them back. They agreed to it at the gathering. They shouldn't have attacked us. It was a special mission, like the journey to Highstones. They didn't agree to let you travel through their territory, spat Tigerclaw. You still don't understand clan ways, do you? Okay, so now he's being unreasonable and xenophobic again. Great job. Bluestar stood up. Her eyes flashed as she looked around at the 3 cats, but her voice was calm. You should not have entered RiverClan's hunting grounds. It was a dangerous thing to do. She looked sternly from Fireheart to Graystripe. Fireheart searched her eyes for a harsher reproach, but could find none. He felt torn between gratitude and guilt. He had caused a rift with RiverClan that might threaten the safety of his clan for many moons. Bluestar went on, flicking her tail uneasily. At the same time, you did well to find WindClan and bring them back, but we will need to prepare ourselves for an attack from RiverClan. We need to start training more warriors. Fireheart and Graystripe, Frostfur tells me 2 of our kits are almost ready to begin their training. I want each of you to take a kit as your apprentice. So, why is she rewarding them after they just messed up big time? They killed a cat. It was an accident, but they still killed a cat. And she's like, man, that sucks. Anyway, do you guys want apprentices? Like, what? Fireheart felt stunned. What an honor. He couldn't believe Bluestar had suggested it, especially now. He glanced furtively at Tigerclaw. The deputy sat rigid as a rock. Graystripe raised his head. But none of Frostfur's kits are 6 moons yet. It won't be long before they are. The divisions at the last gathering troubled me, and today... Bluestar's voice trailed off, and Fireheart noticed Graystripe look down at his paws once more. Tigerclaw was staring at Bluestar, his amber eyes hard. Wouldn't it be better to ask more experienced warriors like Longtail or Darkstripe to take on another apprentice? He asked. These 2 are hardly more than apprentices themselves. Heartbreaking. Worst person you know has a great point. I did consider that, replied Bluestar. But Longtail will be busy enough with Swiftpaw, and Darkstripe is getting Dustpaw ready to become a full warrior. What about Runningwind? Tigerclaw asked. Runningwind is a fine hunter and a loyal warrior, Bluestar answered. But I don't think he has the patience for mentoring. ThunderClan has better use for his skills. And you think these 2 have got what it takes to train ThunderClan warriors? Tigerclaw meowed scornfully. Fireheart flinched. Tigerclaw was eyeing him alone as he spoke. Does he think a kitty pet is not fit to train clan-born cats? He wondered angrily. Bluestar stared back at her deputy. We shall find out. Don't forget, they brought WindClan home. And of course, Tigerclaw, she added. I am relying on you to oversee the training. Tigerclaw nodded, and Bluestar turned back to Fireheart and Graystripe. Get something to eat, she ordered. Then rest. We'll have the naming ceremony for the kits at Moon High. So Fireheart and Graystripe leave her den. Fireheart asks Graystripe if he's coming to get something to eat, but he looks very sad, and he says he just wants to sleep. So he does that. They wake up the next morning. Willowpelt wakes Fireheart up for the naming ceremony for the kits, and so he in turn wakes Graystripe up. He's very slow to wake up, so he's obviously kind of depressed. They go out into the clearing, and Halftail congratulates them on bringing WindClan home, and he says, you must come and share the story with the elders one night, which is very sweet. Frostfur is already sitting below the high rock. She has her 2 kits with her. One of them is a smudgy gray, and one of them is ginger. Fireheart asks Graystripe if he's excited. Graystripe just shrugs, and quote, Graystripe. Fireheart lowered his voice. Whiteclaw's death wasn't your fault. It was the worst place for an attack, and the RiverClan cats would have known that. Sandpaw nearly fell over the edge too, he added. He glanced at Sandpaw sitting nearby. Beside her, Dustpaw stared at Fireheart with raw jealousy in his eyes. Fireheart couldn't blame him. He was about to become a mentor when Dustpaw hadn't even been given his warrior name. But he flinched when Dustpaw leaned toward Sandpaw and whispered, loud enough for Fireheart to hear, "I feel sorry for Fireheart's apprentice. Imagine a clan cat being trained by a kitty pet." But for once, Sandpaw didn't react. She just shot an uncomfortable glance at Fireheart. This could be a good uncomfortable or a bad uncomfortable, and I don't know which one it is. Fireheart continues talking to Graystripe, and he tells him Bluestar doesn't blame him. She knows he's a good warrior because she's giving him an apprentice. But Graystripe argues that Bluestar's just doing it because ThunderClan needs more apprentices. And why do we need them? Because I've given RiverClan an excuse to hate us. Graystripe is being very harsh on himself, and Fireheart is kind of shocked. He's about to say something when Bluestar summons the clan together. End quote. When they reached the center of the clearing, Bluestar gazed around at the assembly of cats. "This moon high, we gather together to name 2 new apprentices. Come forward, you 2. The gray kit darted from her mother's side into the clearing, her fluffy tail held high and her blue eyes wide. The ginger kit came forward more slowly. His ears were pricked, and he frowned with seriousness as he walked to the foot of the high rock. Fireheart's heart began to pound in his chest. Which one of these kits would he be given? He couldn't help feeling that the solemn-faced ginger kit would be easier to train, but there was something about the gray kit's clumsy enthusiasm that reminded him of himself when he had first joined the clan. From this day forward, Bluestar meowed, gazing down at the little gray kit. Until she has earned her warrior name, this apprentice will be called Cinderpaw. Cinderpaw! The gray kit couldn't help mewing her new name out loud. A quietening hiss came from Frostfur, and Cinderpaw ducked her head apologetically. I think this is so cute. I already love her. Fireheart, meowed Bluestar. You are ready for your first apprentice. You will begin Cinderpaw's training. Pride swelled in Fireheart's chest. You are fortunate, Fireheart, to have had more than one mentor. I expect you to pass on everything I taught you to this young apprentice. Fireheart suddenly began to feel a bit overwhelmed. Bluestar's words carried a weight of responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for. And share with her the skills you learned from Tigerclaw and Lionheart. At the mention of Lionheart, Fireheart pictured the golden warrior looking down on him from Silverpelt with warm, encouraging eyes. He lifted his head and returned Bluestar's gaze as steadily as he could. And this apprentice, Bluestar turned her gaze toward the ginger kit, will be known as Brackenpaw. Brackenpaw didn't move or make a sound. Graystripe, you will train Brackenpaw. Our lost friend Lionheart was your mentor. I hope that his skill and wisdom will pass through you to your new apprentice. Graystripe lifted his head high at Bluestar's words, and for a moment a gleam of pride showed in his eyes. He stepped forward and touched his new apprentice's nose with his own. Brackenpaw returned the touch politely. Only his eyes, which shone like stars, gave away the fact that this young cat was as excited as his sister. As soon as Fireheart saw the pair touch noses, he realized he should have done the same. He stepped forward quickly. Cinderpaw jerked her head up, and their noses collided painfully. Cinderpaw touched his nose again, this time less awkwardly, but Fireheart's eyes were beginning to water. He could see that Cinderpaw was trying to stop her whiskers from twitching with amusement, and a flush of embarrassment washed over him. I'm a mentor, he reminded himself. Yeah, they're already perfect for each other. Fireheart looked around at the rest of the clan. Every cat seemed to be nodding approvingly. Then his eyes found Tigerclaw. From the edge of the clearing, the deputy's amber gaze seemed to mock him. Fireheart looked hastily down at Cinderpaw, who was staring at him with undisguised pride. Fireheart's fur suddenly began to prickle. He wanted to be a great warrior and a good mentor more than anything else, but it seemed painfully clear that Tigerclaw was just waiting for him to fail. That's the end of Chapter 8. I'm going to take a quick drink break. I'm trying the new Red Bull flavor, or I already tried it yesterday. It's the Fuji Apple Ginger, and it is so delicious. I love it. It is so freaking yummy. Alright, we're going to get into Chapter 9. It starts with, quote, Fireheart woke to find Graystripe sitting beside him, hunched on his belly like a rabbit, his shoulders stiff and his fur fluffed out. Graystripe? He meowed quietly. Graystripe jumped. Are you okay? Graystripe sat up straight. I'm fine. Fireheart suspected that his friend's cheery mew wasn't heartfelt, but at least he was trying to be more positive. It looks cold, Fireheart meowed. Graystripe's words had billowed out in clouds. Fireheart was still snuggling down amongst the warm bodies of the other warriors. It is. Graystripe bent to lick his chest. Fireheart sat up and shook his head. The air tasted of frost. What are you going to do with Brackenpaw today? He asked. Show him the forest, answered Graystripe. I could bring Cinderpaw and we could travel together. It might be better if we travel alone today, answered Graystripe. Fireheart felt a bit hurt. They had been shown ThunderClan's hunting grounds together as apprentices. He would have liked to do it together again as mentors. But if Graystripe wanted to be by himself, then Fireheart could hardly blame him. Fine, he mewed. I'll see you later. We can share a mouse and compare apprentices. That'd be good, Graystripe meowed. This makes me sad. Graystripe should lean on his best friend instead of pushing him away. I feel bad that he feels bad. But this is also, not the way to go. Fireheart goes and wakes up Cinderpaw in her den, and she asks, quote, What are we doing today? She mewed, looking up at him with her ears pricked. I thought I'd take you on a tour of ThunderClan territory. Will we see the Thunderpath? Asked Cinderpaw eagerly. Yes, we will, Fireheart replied. He couldn't help thinking Cinderpaw would be disappointed when she saw what a dirty, stinking place it was. "Are you hungry?" he asked, wondering if he should tell her to eat first. "No," Cinderpaw shook her head. "Oh, okay, we'll eat later," Fireheart meowed. "Well, follow me." "Yes, Fireheart." The young cat looked up at him, her eyes sparkling. The pang of sadness that had been lingering in Fireheart's stomach since talking with Graystripe was swept away by a warm feeling of pride. So Fireheart tells Cinderpaw to follow him, but she runs ahead because she's excited. He tells her to save her energy and to actually follow him. He shows her the stream where he caught his first prey in the owl tree. She's asking a million questions and very curious, and it's the cutest thing. And at the owl tree, he shows her something. He says, quote, "Look at the ground. What do you see?" Cinderpaw looked down, puzzled. "Leaves? Try burrowing under the leaves." The forest floor was carpeted with brown oak leaves, crisp with frost. Cinderpaw began snuffling among them and then shoved her nose in right up to her ears. When she sat up, there was something the size and shape of a pine cone in her mouth. "Yuck! Smells like crow food," she spat. Fireheart purred with amusement. "You knew it was there, didn't you? Bluestar played the same trick on me when I was an apprentice. You'll never forget the stench." "What is it?" "An owl pod," Fireheart explained. He remembered what Bluestar had told him. "Owls eat the same prey as us, but they can't digest the bones and fur, so their bellies roll the leftovers into pods and they spit them out. If you find one of those under a tree, it means you found an owl." "Why would you want to find an owl?" squeaked Cinderpaw in alarm. Fireheart's whiskers twitched as he looked into her wide eyes, as blue as her mother's. Frostfur must have told her the elder's tale of how owls carried off young kits who strayed from their mother's side. "Owls get a better view of the forest than we do. On windy nights, when scents are hard to follow, you can look out for owls and follow where they hunt." Cinderpaw's eyes were still wide, but the fear had left them, and she nodded. "She does listen sometimes," Fireheart thought with relief. I like this lesson, and I like that these cats somehow know exactly how owls digest their prey. Are there cat scientists here? I'm wondering how they figured that out on their own, because cats can't figure out how cars work, and they just call them monsters, but they can somehow figure out how owls digest their food. I don't know. It's just funny. So they go to the Great Sycamore. On the way, they go to Snake Rocks. Cinderpaw runs ahead. Fireheart is worried about the adders. She gets up on a big rock at the bottom of Snake Rocks and says she'll race him to the top, but he tells her to get down, and he tells her about Snake Rocks, and she looks very scared, and Fireheart says, "Adders live up there. A bite from one of those would kill a cat as small as you." He gives her a lick on the top of her head, and then says, "Come on, let's have a look at the Thunder Path." Cinderpaw stops shaking at once. The Thunder Path? What is her obsession with the Thunder Path? Does she have any idea what it is? Or does the name just sound cool? And she's like, "Oh, Thunder Path." So he goes and shows her the Thunder Path. She does not like the smell of it, as he predicted, but she can smell ShadowClan from across the border. And he doesn't want to get into a fight with them or run into them, so they head back to Tall Pines and the Tree Cut place, which is near the Two Leg place. When they get closer to Two Leg territory and get close to the fences, they spot a cat. And quote, "Look!" Cinderpaw pointed with her nose at a she-cat padding across the forest floor. The light brown tabby had a distinctive white chest and white front paws. Her belly was swollen, heavy with unborn kits. "Kitty pet," sneered Cinderpaw, her fur fluffed out. "Let's chase her out." Fireheart expected to feel the familiar rush of aggression at the sight of a stranger on ThunderClan territory, but his hackles stayed flat. For some reason he couldn't understand, he knew this cat wasn't a threat. Could this be a cat he previously knew from when he was a kitty pet? Before Cinderpaw could attack, Fireheart deliberately brushed against a stalk of crunchy bracken. The she-cat looked up, disturbed by the crackling noise. Her eyes widened with alarm, then she whipped around and set off at a lumbering pace out of the trees. Within moments, she was heaving herself over one of the two-leg fences. "Rats," complained Cinderpaw. "I wanted to chase her. I bet Brackenpaw will have chased hundreds of things today." "Yeah, but he probably didn't nearly get bitten by an adder," replied Fireheart, twitching his tail at her. "Now come on, I'm getting hungry." So he leads them back through the tree cut place and back into camp, and they're both tired from their day. Cinderpaw goes to find Brackenpaw and talk to him. He goes to talk to Graystripe, who very graciously got him some fresh kill. Fireheart asks Graystripe if it was a good day, and he says it was better than yesterday, and he's enjoying training Brackenpaw. And Graystripe says he kept forgetting he was the mentor and not the apprentice, and Fireheart agrees. And quote, "They shared tongues until the moon rose and the coldness of the night drove them into their den." Graystripe was snoring within moments, but Fireheart felt strangely awake. The image of the pregnant she-cat kept returning to his mind, and even though he was surrounded by the familiar smells of ThunderClan, her soft kitty pet scent lingered in his nostrils. He fell asleep at last, but his dreams all carried the same scent, until finally he dreamed of his days as a kid. He remembered lying beside his mother's belly, curled in a bed softer than any forest moss with his brothers and sisters. and still the scent of the she-cat lingered. Fireheart opened his eyes, suddenly jolted out of his sleep. Of course, the she-cat he had seen in the woods was his sister. And that's the end of chapter 9. How does he just know that? Can cats actually remember the scents of their littermates? I'm gonna, see if I can look that up. Do cats remember their siblings? Okay, so young kittens will remember their siblings for some time after leaving their littermates. Cats will actually remember any cat for a while, and they remember familiar scents, but it's not exactly clear how long a cat can retain the knowledge of another cat's scent. It's likely to be a year or more, so it's probably not like the rest of their lives. So, yeah, I would say this is plausible that Fireheart remembers his sister. So, I'm glad it's not, entirely inaccurate. Okay, we're gonna get into chapter 10, which starts with, quote, Fireheart woke at dawn with the image of his sister still clear in his mind. He pushed his way out of the den, hoping the routine of the day would distract him. It was another cold, frosty morning. Whitestorm and Longtail were waiting near the camp entrance, preparing to leave on patrol. Mousefur padded past on her way to join them and greeted Fireheart with a cheery mew. Whitestorm called for Sandpaw, who came racing out of her den just in time to follow the patrol as it pounded out of the camp. It was a scene Fireheart had watched many times, but for once he didn't yearn to join them as they thundered away into the morning fresh forest. Is it because of the cold, or is it because of his kitty pet sister? I'm not liking this. He padded across the clearing, wondering if Cinderpaw was awake yet. Brindleface was just squeezing out of the narrow nursery entrance. A speckled kit followed her, then one more. A third kit, pale gray with darker flecks like the other, tumbled out and fell onto the ground. Brindleface picked it up by its scruff and placed it gently back on its paws. The tenderness of Brindleface's action brought Fireheart's dream flooding back. His mother had probably done the same for him. He knew that Brindleface's fourth kit had died soon after it was born, and she seemed to love the remaining kits even more fiercely now. Fireheart was overwhelmed by a pang of envy at the thought that the other cats here all shared something he did not. They were all clan-born. Fireheart had always been proud of his loyalty to the clan that had taken him in and given him a life he would never have known as a kitty pet. He still felt that loyalty. He would die to protect ThunderClan. But no one in the clan understood or even respected his kitty pet roots. Fireheart felt certain the she-cat he had seen yesterday would. With an ache in his heart, he wondered what memories they might share. So the theme of this book seems to be Fireheart is confronted with his upbringing over and over again, many times, and it's not exactly testing his loyalty, but it's kind of getting in the way. Fireheart asks Graystripe if he can take Cinderpaw for the day, because he wants to check out something he saw yesterday, and he warns him about Cinderpaw because she doesn't listen, and says to not take her eyes off her, or she'll be charging off in every direction. Graystripe says she sounds like a pawful, but it'll be good for Brackenpaw. He never charges off anywhere without thinking about it carefully first. And he agrees to watch Cinderpaw. So Fireheart thanks him. He tracks the cat's scent into Two Lake Place and finds her house and waits for her to come out. He tries to think of what to say to not scare her, and he's hiding under a bush in her yard. So he calls out softly from the bushes, "It's me, Rusty!" The she-cat stopped dead and looked around. Fireheart took a deep breath and crept out from the bushes. The cat's eyes widened with terror. Fireheart knew how he must appear to her, lean and wild with the sharp forest scents on his pelt. The she-cat raised her hackles and hissed ferociously. Fireheart couldn't help feeling impressed by her courage. In a flash, he remembered his sister's name. "Princess, it's me, Rusty, your brother. Do you remember me?" I don't know how he remembers her name. Her scent? I can get behind. Her name? I don't know, because how old were they when they were separated? Because if they were separated when they were, newborns, there's no way he would remember her name. I don't know. Maybe he was a few months old. Who knows? It's a fictional cat book. I don't think it's that serious, but I get very particular about details. Princess remained tense. Fireheart guessed she was wondering how the strange cat could know these names. He dropped into a submissive crouch, hope soaring in his chest as he watched his sister's expression slowly change from fear to curiosity. "Rusty?" Princess sniffed the air, wide-eyed and wary. Fireheart took a careful step forward. Princess did not move, so Fireheart edged closer. Still, his sister held her ground until Fireheart was standing only a mouse length away. "You don't smell like Rusty," she mewed. "I don't live with Two Legs anymore. I've been living in the forest with ThunderClan. I carry their scent now." She's probably never heard of the clans, Fireheart realized, remembering his own innocence before he'd met Graystripe in the woods. Princess stretched her neck forward and rubbed her muzzle cautiously along his cheek. "But our mother's smell is still there," she murmured, half to herself. Her words filled Fireheart with happiness until her eyes narrowed and she took a step backward, her ears flat with distrust. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I saw you yesterday in the woods," Fireheart explained. "I had to come back to speak with you." "Why?" Fireheart looked at her in surprise. "Because you're my sister. Surely she must feel something for him?" To be fair, if a forest cat that only kind of reminded me of my brother told me we were siblings, I'd be very doubtful and, very on edge. So I'm with Princess here. Princess studied him for a moment. To Fireheart's relief, her guarded expression lifted. "You're very thin," she mewed critically. "Not the body shaming." "Thinner than a kitty pet, maybe, but not thin for a forest cat," Fireheart replied. "Your scent was in my dreams last night." Fireheart does not realize how creepy he sounds right now. Fireheart, you're a man. She's a woman. She's going to be freaked out by this. It's a universal thing. "I dreamed of you and our brothers and sisters, and..." Fireheart paused. "Where is our mother?" "She's still with her housefolk," answered Princess. "What about..." Princess guessed what he was going to ask. "Our brothers and sisters? Most of them live near here. I see them in their gardens from time to time." They sat silently for a moment, then Fireheart asked, "Do you remember the soft bedding of our mother's basket?" He felt a flicker of guilt about longing for such kitty pet softness, but Princess purred, "Oh yes, I wish I could have it for my own kidding." Fireheart's discomfort faded. It felt good to be able to talk of such a tender memory without shame. "Will this litter be your first?" First talking about her scent in his dreams, then going straight into, "So you're pregnant? So you're pregnant?" He's being weird. I don't think he means to be weird, but he's being weird. Princess nodded, uncertainty showing in her eyes. Fireheart felt a wave of sympathy. Even though they were the same age, she seemed to him very young and naive. "You'll be fine," he mewed, remembering Brindleface's kidding. "You look as if your two legs treat you well. I'm sure your kits will be healthy and safe." Princess moved closer to him, pressing her fur against his flank. Fireheart felt his heart swell with emotion. For the first time since he was a kid, he caught a glimpse of what the clan cats must take for granted. The closeness of kinship, a common bond determined by birth and heritage. I don't think they take that for granted. I just think he slightly misses being a kitty pet, but doesn't want to say it. So the conversation continues. Fireheart tells Princess about clan life, and she clearly has no idea what he's saying. Her owner / two-leg calls her back inside, and Fireheart promises to visit her again. So Fireheart goes back to the forest. His memories are still flooding his mind. He pauses at the top of the ravine in front of ThunderClan camp. He didn't feel ready to go back yet. He was worried that it would all seem strange to him. He's that easily swayed by a 10-minute visit. Are you serious? He wanted to be a wildcat so bad, and now he's like, I don't know. Yeah, sometimes doing what you actually want to do that is actually rewarding is hard. So he just decides to go hunting to get his mind back to normal. End quote. When he finally returned to camp, he carried a vole and a wood pigeon in his mouth. The sun was setting, and the clan cats were gathering for their evening meal. Graystripe sat alone beside the nettle clump, a fat chaffinch at his paws. Fireheart nodded to him as he padded across the clearing to the pile of fresh kill that had already been collected. Tigerclaw was sitting below the high rock, his amber eyes narrow. "I noticed that Cinderpaw spent the day with Graystripe," he meowed as Fireheart dropped his catch onto the pile. "Where were you?" Fireheart returned Tigerclaw's gaze. "It seemed a good day for hunting. Too good to waste," he replied, his heart thudding in his chest. "The clan needs all the fresh kill it can get at the moment." Tigerclaw nodded, suspicion darkening his eyes. "Yes, but we also need warriors. Cinderpaw's training is your responsibility." "I understand, Tigerclaw," Fireheart meowed. He dipped his head respectfully. "I'll take her out tomorrow." "Good." The deputy turned his head and looked around the camp. Fireheart picked up a mouse and carried it over to eat next to Graystripe. "Find what you were looking for?" asked Graystripe absently. "Yes." Fireheart felt a pang of sorrow for the pain in his friend's eyes. "Are you thinking about that RiverClan warrior?" "I do try not to," answered Graystripe quietly. "It's just when I'm alone, I can't help remembering Barkface's prediction of an unnecessary death and trouble ahead." "Here," Fireheart interrupted and pushed his mouse toward Graystripe. "That chaffinch looks like it'll be half feathers, and I'm not that hungry. Want to swap?" Graystripe shot him a grateful glance, and the two friends exchanged prey and began to eat. As he crunched on the chaffinch, Fireheart scanned the clearing. He could see Sandpaw and Dustpaw outside the apprentice's den. Dustpaw was busy ripping apart a rabbit. Fireheart caught Sandpaw's eye, but she looked away. Cinderpaw lay beside the old tree stump where he'd shared many meals as an apprentice. She was chatting enthusiastically to Brackenpaw, who nodded from time to time while plucking the feathers from a sparrow. Seeing the two young cats, brother and sister, lying together so at ease reminded Fireheart once more of Princess, and for the first time the familiar sense of his clan made Fireheart feel uneasy. He had been careful to lick his sister's smell from his fur before returning to camp, but it was her scent that lingered in his nostrils as the sun disappeared over the distant horizon. He had found the closeness he had missed, but it had given shape to a sense of loneliness that, until now, had lain vague and nameless in his heart. Were the deep-rooted memories he shared with Princess stronger than his loyalty to the clan? That's the end of chapter 10. I hope not. I freaking hope. I mean, there's a lot of books in the series, so I hope not. It'd be really funny, though, if he became a warrior cat for, like, a book and a half, and then he was like, nah, guys, I'm done. Goodbye. And then the credits roll. And there's just no other warrior cats books. There's only 2. Alright, so we get into chapter 11. There's a bit of a time skip. Fireheart has visited Princess almost every day, which is a bad idea. He and Graystripe talk about the weather, and Graystripe hopes it stays clear because his fur gets damp for longer. As a long-haired soldier, I feel this. So it's a training day. They get to the Sandy Hollow and tell their apprentices that they're going on a hunting mission to Sunning Rocks to bring back prey for the elders. End quote. Cinderpaw raced down the slope across the hollow and up to Fireheart's side, sending fallen leaves flying everywhere. Graystripe leaped up and caught one as it drifted past his nose. He pinned it to the ground with a purr of satisfaction and saw Brackenpaw staring at him. Never miss a chance to practice your hunting skills, Graystripe told him quickly. I'm glad to see that cats don't lose their whimsy when they become adults. I love how whimsical Graystripe is. So the cats get to Sunning Rocks, and they immediately lay down in the sun on the rocks, typical cat behavior, seemingly forgetting to hunt. And Brackenpaw asks if this is where Redtail died. Yes, Fireheart answered cautiously. And where Tigerclaw avenged his death by killing Oakheart, Cinderpaw piped up. Fireheart's fur prickled as he remembered Ravenpaw's account of the fight, that Redtail had been responsible for Oakheart's death, and then Tigerclaw had killed Redtail, the deputy of his own clan. Fireheart pushed away the disturbing thoughts and replied simply, "This is the place." The 2 apprentices fell silent and looked down the slope in awe. So it's good to know the authors haven't forgotten about the whole Tigerclaw thing, because they've been so focused on Fireheart's kitty pet dilemma, I guess. So they sit and listen to hear for some prey. Cinderpaw starts to hunt a vole, but she scares it off, so Fireheart shows her how to properly catch one. She is amazed and wants to try it herself, but they can no longer hunt there since the vole made a very loud squeak when it died. Which makes sense. So their hunting mission is just completely failed, like they didn't even try, I guess. And on their way back, Fireheart notices he can't hear the river, but Cinderpaw says that she can see through the trees that it's frozen. She takes off to go look at it, and since she's going to be very close to RiverClan territory, Fireheart runs after her to get her back. The other 2, Graystripe and Brackenpaw, follow along. Graystripe smells a water vole near the river and goes onto the frozen ice. Fireheart warns him to come back, but it's too late. End quote. The ice beneath Graystripe's paws gave a terrifying crack and broke. With a startled yowl, Graystripe fell into the water. He paddled madly for a moment before disappearing into the cold, dark depths of the river. Brackenpaw stared in horror, and Cinderpaw gave a desperate mew. Fireheart didn't quiet her. He was rigid with fear, staring into the water after his friend. Was Graystripe trapped underneath the ice? Fireheart stepped onto the ice. It felt cold and slippery beneath his paws, impossible to run on. He jumped back onto the bank. Panic gripped him, then a blaze of relief as his drenched gray head appeared in the water further along. But relief turned to alarm as Fireheart saw that Graystripe was being carried downriver, turning and bobbing in the freezing waters. His paws thrashed helplessly, all his instincts to swim thwarted by the fierce current. Fireheart bounded along the bank, forcing his way through the bracken, but Graystripe was swept farther and farther away. Suddenly, Fireheart heard a yowl from the opposite bank and stopped. A slender silver tabby had leaped onto the ice farther downstream. She padded lightly over the frozen sheet and slid into the river ahead of Graystripe. Amazed, Fireheart watched the she-cat swim strongly against the current, holding her position in the icy water with confident, churning paws. As Graystripe was swept past, the tabby grabbed a mouthful of his fur between her teeth. But to Fireheart's horror, Graystripe's weight pulled both cats under. He started running again, his eyes fixed on the river. Where were they? Then a silver-striped head appeared amid the rolling waters, pushing through the waves. The tabby was swimming against the current, dragging Graystripe with her. Fireheart could hardly believe that such a slender cat could swim with such a weight. The tabby grabbed the ice on Fireheart's side of the river with her forepaws, her neck craning awkwardly as she held Graystripe between her teeth. Slipping and sliding, she hauled herself out of the river. Graystripe hung limply in the water, twisting and turning as the current dragged at his fur, but the tabby kept a firm grip. Fireheart slid down the bank, raced across the ice, and skidded to a halt beside her. Without a word, he reached forward and took hold of Graystripe in his teeth. Together, the two cats heaved his soaking body out of the water and dragged him to the safety of the riverbank. Fireheart bent over his friend to see if he was breathing. He felt dizzy with relief as he saw Graystripe's slick gray flank rising and falling. Graystripe coughed and spluttered and spat out a mouthful of river water. Then he lay still. "Graystripe," Fireheart mewed urgently. "I'm okay," wheezed Graystripe. His mew was breathless but reassuring. Fireheart sighed and sat down. He looked closely at the silver tabby. She carried the scent of RiverClan on her. After seeing her swim, Fireheart wasn't surprised. The tabby returned his gaze coldly, shook herself, and sat down, her sides heaving as she got her breath back. Water streamed from her glossy fur as if her pelts were made from duck feathers. Graystripe turned his head and looked at his rescuer. "Thanks," he croaked. "You idiot," she spat, flattening her ears. "What are you doing in my territory?" "Drowning," replied Graystripe. The silver tabby flicked her ears, and Fireheart saw a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. "Can't you drown yourself in your own territory?" Graystripe's whiskers twitched. "Ah, but who would rescue me there?" he rasped. "Are they seriously flirting right now? Seriously?" Fireheart urges Graystripe that they should get back to camp before he freezes to death. The RiverClan cat also urges them to go, and she says, "If my father knew that I'd rescued a ThunderClan intruder, he'd shred me for kit betting." "Why'd you save me then?" teased Graystripe. The tabby looked away. "Instinct. I couldn't watch any cat drown. Now go." So they leave, and right before they get out of sight, Graystripe asks for her name, and we learn it is Silverstream, which is a very pretty name. Graystripe, on the way back, is looking over his shoulder multiple times. Cinderpaw teases him and says, "What a pretty RiverClan cat she was," and Graystripe swipes at her ear, so she runs ahead again. Fireheart hisses at her to stay close, as they're still on RiverClan territory, and it's her fault that Graystripe is now soaking wet and freezing. And so as they're walking, quote, Fireheart quickened the pace. "Are you okay?" he asked Graystripe. "Fine," replied Graystripe through chattering teeth. "Sorry," mewed Cinderpaw softly as she fell into step behind Fireheart. He sighed. "It's not your fault." He felt weighed down with worry. How were they going to explain this to the clan? No fresh kill for the elders. There wasn't time to go back for the vole now, and a soaked Graystripe. Fireheart shuddered as he thought how close he had come to losing his closest friend. Thank StarClan that Silverstream had been there to save him. The stream near the training hollow was still running with water, Brackenpaw meowed thoughtfully from the back. "What?" asked Fireheart, puzzled out of his gloomy thoughts. "The clan will probably assume that Graystripe fell in there," continued the young apprentice. "We could say he was showing us how to catch fish," Cinderpaw added. "I'm not sure any cat would believe Graystripe would get his paws wet on purpose in this weather," Fireheart pointed out. "Well, I don't want the rest of the clan to know I had to be rescued by a RiverClan cat," meowed Graystripe with a flash of his old spirit. "And we can't let them know we were in RiverClan's territory again." Fireheart nodded. "Come on," he meowed. "Let's run the rest of the way. It'll help Graystripe warm up." The cats raced across the RiverClan border and past Sunning Rocks. As the sun began to dip behind the treetops, they arrived back outside the camp. Graystripe's fur had dried a little, but frozen droplets hung on his whiskers and tail. Fireheart led the way through the gorse entrance. His heart sank when he saw Tigerclaw sitting in the clearing, watching them. The deputy fixed his sharp eyes on Fireheart. "No fresh kill?" he growled. "I thought you were meant to be teaching these two how to hunt today. You look half drowned, Graystripe. You must have fallen into a river to get that wet." His nostrils flared, and he drew himself up to his full height. "Don't tell me you've been into RiverClan territory again." And that's the end of Chapter 11, and that's where we're going to stop for today. So, Fireheart and Graystripe just keep messing up in this book. Fireheart is worse now than he was in book 1. He needs to kind of get it together. Like, actually. He knows enough now. He knows better by now. Again, as I've said in a previous episode, he's very chaotic good. Like, he wants to do good, but he's going about it in ways that kind of challenge the warrior code. But yeah, I guess they're in trouble with Tigerclaw again, which is great. Graystripe clearly has a crush on this RiverClan cat. We'll see where that goes. And yeah, that's going to be the end of the episode for today. Thank you so much for joining me. You can follow my personal Twitter. That will be in the description. And you can find Cattails on Instagram and Twitter as well. You can follow those accounts to get to know when Cattails updates. New episodes are every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, thank you guys for joining me so much. What? Okay, let me try that again. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And I will see you on the next one. May StarClan light your path.